Welcome everyone to today's SCAG Toolbox Tuesday session on youth-driven urban planning through YPlan. My name is Annalie Ekman. I'm a senior regional planner at SCAG in the Planning Strategy Department, and I'll be kicking off today's meeting before I hand things over to Deborah McKoy and Shirl Buss, who I'll introduce in a little bit. And while we introduce the session, I'd encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know your names, pronouns, where you're joining from, and yeah, just go ahead and say hi if you want. On the slide before you is a handful of meeting logistics items. This meeting is anticipated to take an hour and a half. All participant lines will be muted during the presentation, and if you have a question, you can type it into the chat box. And today's meeting will be recorded, and the presentations and session recording will be posted on the SCAG website and sent to everyone who registered for the event. At this time, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. We are currently on occupied and unceded land of Indigenous peoples who are and have been the traditional caretakers of the land in this region. I'm calling in from Chumash and Gabrieleño land. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to visit the resources shared in the chat to learn more about the traditional inhabitants of the land you live and work on. And quickly, I'd like to frame this session within SCAG's equity efforts. So in July 2020, SCAG's Regional Council adopted a resolution affirming its commitment to advancing justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion throughout Southern California. The Special Committee on Equity and Social Justice guided the development of a working definition of racial equity and the Racial Equity Early Action Plan. The Early Action Plan includes 4 goals, 3 strategies to advance racial equity throughout through SCAG's policies, practices, and activities. And one of the goals is to encourage racial equity in local planning practices, which is what we aim to do through these equity-focused Toolbox Tuesday sessions. And some of those sessions are posted on this slide. In fact, now's a good time to mention that we held a session in June that focused on youth empowerment programs in the SCAG region. So if you find today's session engaging and interesting, you can continue learning about youth empowerment by going back and watching the June 2023 Youth Empowerment Programs panel. And you can access those through and other previous Toolbox Tuesday sessions through the link in the chat and on the slide. So I am going to launch a poll. This is to kind of introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming from, and also to get you thinking about your experiences with youth engagement. So there's 3 questions if you scroll down on the poll, and I'll give everyone a minute or so to fill that out. All right, we've reached 78%. Anyone else want to join? I'll go ahead. It keeps on being like one more, and then okay. I'll go ahead and end the poll right now, and just share with you that most of the people in this room today are from local government, although we have some representation from advocacy organizations, county and regional governments, and something else. So if you're something else, would love to know where you're calling in from. And most people here are from the SCAG region or somewhere else in California. And it looks like we have some good representation as far as who, in what capacity, if you've participated in a youth engagement program. Looks like we've had a lot of organizers and volunteers, participants, people who've had family or friends participate, only a couple who've never been involved. And I appreciate that some of you have attended the Youth Empowerment Toolbox Tuesday meeting. Welcome back. I definitely was talking without even sharing the results. So sorry. The results are out. But yeah, thanks for participating in that. And I'm sorry, Mike, if we went away after the first one, but hope to just you can introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like to. And now I am honored to introduce our presenters for today's session. Dr. Deborah McKoy is an executive director and founder of the UC Berkeley Center for Cities and Schools at the Institute of Urban and Regional Development and a lecturer in the Department of City and Regional Planning. Her research and teaching focus on the intersection of educational reform, urban and metropolitan planning, community development, and public policy. Central to our work is the critical role young people play in urban and metropolitan change transformation. Deborah has an impressive professional resume, working in housing, economic development, and refugee services in New York City. And Deborah's most recent publication is called Planning Cities with Young People in Schools, Forging Justice and Generating Joy, with co-authors Amanda Epley and Dr. Shirl Buss, who's also here today, and a designer, educator, and urban planner, and the creative director of YPlan. Shirl has worked with children and adults on architectural, interpretive design, and community development projects with a specialty in consensus-based participation in the design process. Shirl also has vast experience researching, teaching, program directing in schools and museums all over the Bay Area and California, and at UCLA you mentioned earlier. So I'll now hand it over to Deborah and Shirl to take us through the rest of the session.
Hi, thank you so much. We're just thrilled to be here today. I'm going to try to share my screen here, hopefully still in practice here. Okay, everyone can see that, yeah. Okay, so I'm Deborah McKoy. Shirl and I are with the Center for Cities and Schools. Can I show of a hands or a thumbs up if you've heard of our center before today? Just trying to get a sense. Either physical hands up or a digital hands up. It's always good to get a sense of it. Okay, so I think we have a lot of newcomers, which is terrific. The Center for Cities and Schools is an interdisciplinary action research center between the Department of City Planning and the Graduate School of Education. It's kind of crazy. In September, we'll be marking a 20-year milestone. What we're talking about today, the role of young people engaging in our cities, actually predates the center. Shirl and I have been working together since the beginning, one of my great teachers and mentors in this work. And it really was working with young people that led to the need to create a center at Berkeley, bringing a more formal understanding of the policy and practice and planning of cities and schools. So what you're hearing about today was actually the driver of the creation of the Center for Cities and Schools. And we also like to think of this work as our heartbeat, because it keeps us focused on the needs, priorities, and brilliance of young people in our cities. So with that quick intro, I'm gonna do a quick agenda and then get started with today's talk. After my introduction, we're gonna do a quick overview on the YPlan strategy and kind of a quick idea about the core fundamentals of the process and what we do and have done for many years. Then we'll have a quick spotlight. Shirl and I will go over some of our first practice when we started here in Oakland, California, and other work we're doing in the Bay Area, and even a little snapshot of global YPlan. I had just returned literally 36 hours ago from Japan, where we've worked as well. So she had a really quick idea about some of the global youth engagement work as well. We'll then bring young people into the equation in the best way we can by showing a video of a regional strategy that was done in 2018. It's one of, I think, the best ways to do storytelling and really engage young people in sharing their work and the importance of this with you all. Following that, we'll share our toolkit for Toolbox Tuesday. We're excited that we actually have put 20 years of our work literally online, that we really want to just get the work out and the lesson plans and videos and everything that we did over 20 years. We put it online, hopefully to be of help to you all on the call today and beyond. We'll break out into breakout groups. We're excited to have some small dialogue. I see we have a lot of people online, so I'll have a small group trying to get deeper insight into what's happening in your communities. And also how this work can be helpful moving forward. Every time we share this work, we say we are now offering it for free. The only thing that we ask is that you let us know how it's going. It can be on a website or whatever, but we really are curious how we can continue to make this work better for everybody. So we're excited to share that and dialogue around it. But invite everybody back, and then depending on how much time we have, we'll ask for a quick debrief with 1 or 2 highlights from each small group discussion. So thumbs up when I'm teaching. I'm always like, okay, we're ready to move on. Okay, try to get some type of interactive activity with a bunch of people on Zoom. So I think I'll get started. As I shared, we're Interdisciplinary Action Research Center, and this is really our mission, is really having conversations exactly like what we're doing today, aiming to promote high quality education and young people as essential component of urban and metropolitan vitality. When Shirl, I, and Mandy were coming up with a title for our book, we actually wanted the title to be Forging Justice and Generating Joy. Publishers wanted it more straightforward, so it became a subtitle. But this notion about creating just and joy in our cities, I think we talk a lot about justice, but what we feel young people bring to the equation, I think more than almost anybody else, is joy. I mean, why don't we want joyful cities and joyful classrooms, right? So hopefully today we'll inject a little bit of that joy into our conversation, because I think young people just invite imagination and ability to dream in a very new and fresh way. So that's our center. Okay, so what is YPLAN? First, YPLAN is an acronym. It stands for Youth Plan, Learn, Act Now. We love acronyms in academia. Again, it's been around over 20 years, which is amazing. It's fundamental as civic engagement strategy, hopefully a real tool for the planning and development community, bringing young people in schools into the heart of city planning and social change more broadly. Working with an educator's hat, we often say we're bilingual. I speak both planning and educationese. Work-based learning is something that's a very big part of secondary education, in particular in schools of California. So we invite YPLAN to work with schools where young people really serve as consultants for you all, for city leaders, for city planners, trying to solve a problem that you really need youth perspective on. So it also serves as a work-based learning opportunity, sort of like a internship in the summer, but done during the school year. Or after school as well. It's also a class that I've taught at Berkeley. If there are any Cal alum in city planning, I've yet to be on a meeting where there isn't at least 1 or 2 alum of the city planning department at Berkeley. So this work has really evolved from our collaboration and hundreds of graduate and undergraduate students that have been a part of this work. So that is great. And as we've grown regionally and nationally, it's also a regional and global network. So we're excited to include you all now in that community of practice. But YPLAN is also a pun, right? It's stepping back and inviting young people to ask why, right? Why do we plan? Here are just some of the questions we have engaged with young people. Why can't we prepare more for climate change? And this is what's really interesting when young people start getting critical about their communities. If we improve the community, will we still be able to live in it and afford to live in it? Particularly when we're working on downtown plans or places that they're worried about displacement. How can we feel safer biking and walking to and from school? Why don't our bus stops have benches and provide shelter, often even, for the unhoused? Why is there so much violence on our streets? And then this is sort of a fundamental question that really gets across all of our questions, all of the different areas and topics. Why are conditions the way they are here in one corner, one street, and not in another part of our city, often just a block or 2 away? Young people are so aware, especially when they start actually going out and examining and looking at place and streets and sidewalks in a very different way. Why does that inequality exist? The best part about our work, though, is not stopping there. You can never stop at just identifying the problems. We do that too often with young people. What's critical is engaging them and listening to young people. And when they say, why not engage in doing this really cool type of bench? Why not engage in expanding the bus route so that we can actually get to the internships or get to our first period class on time, right? Why not really? They have wonderful proposals, and that's the heart of the Y Plan work, not only asking, but generating new ideas and visions for change. A couple of quick things, as I see almost everybody on the call has done some type of youth engagement, which is fantastic. Here are a few ingredients to the Y Plan work that I'm sure will resonate with some of you all and maybe be a little different for some. Number one, and this is sort of a core thing, we work with authentic civic client. So with not just a client who's interested in working with young people, but folks that come to our work needing the input of young people. There are lots of simulation and exercises, and that's great to do as an exercise, but we believe this is not youth development alone. This is really about effective city planning. So really working with authentic projects with young people. It's classroom and academic based. A majority has been inside of classrooms, and we can talk about that. It was an equity issue about exposing as many young people as we can, but it is absolutely also available as an after school or weekend summer type of activity. All of our work is social justice and equity focused. It follows a 5-step methodology. I'll next just walk you through those quick 5 steps. Again, they should be familiar. It's how we teach participatory planning here at Berkeley. And finally, it's place-based. It's grounded in neighborhood, it's grounding in place and understanding of the power of places. So really quickly, this is our 5-step methodology. When we were writing the book, one of the things that we realized that was so important to highlight was this gray first box, because planning for a project is 50% of the work, right? We actually thought about making it 50%, but I think we'd scare everybody away. So, there really is a significant planning process in order for the actual work to be as impactful as it can be. So really thinking about today is a part of that planning process for many of you, perhaps learning about Y Plan or the strategy, as well as other strategies that are out there, establishing partnerships, identifying the project topic, and creating a roadmap or a work plan. I'm really quickly going to go through these 5 phases because the toolkit that we'll share with you has more than you ever could want. If anything, we have too much information on there for you. But startup is identifying the strengths of everybody involved in that group, really important to recognize as a community of practice, understanding the challenge, meeting the clients and community partners. The second step is data collection, what we call making sense of the city, doing site mapping, understanding the project site, interviewing, store surveying, and getting young people more and more practice in telling the story. One thing that we've learned as a best practice is never wait to the end to start doing public and public presentations. Every time we meet with young people, we try in some way for young people to present publicly to their group, to the whole class. It just gets everyone really comfortable with the public speaking process. Step 3, not only having data and ideas, but putting them into action, finding inspiration, brainstorming ideas, and then creating a collective vision for change. Most of the work is done in small groups. The next step is ideas just are ideas unless you learn to go public and share those ideas. So that's a critical part of the work. Refining the proposal, preparing, practice before the final presentation, and then presenting to the public. The cool thing, I think, after COVID is that you can do it both. It's important actually to do both in person as well as utilize online strategies for presentation. Schools get a lot more engagement in community meetings, and I'm sure you all as well, using a hybrid form of engagement. And then 5, looking forward, looking back, making sure that the final presentation is not the end, but really reflecting on that. How can this be meaningful, both to young people in what we say, and you see here, college and career ready and community readiness, but also for your work towards creating just and joyful cities. So that reflection process is just super, super important in this work. And again, our toolkit has at least a dozen activities, what you can use for each of these steps, as well as a mini that can be done in a day. So moving on. So now we're going to turn to giving some spotlights, a little bit of overview of the actual work that's happened and is currently happening. We started this in Oakland, in West Oakland at Clyman's High School. Oh my God, it's crazy in 2000. It's so crazy. And it's amazing how exciting it still is, right? It's like, gosh. But we've worked with over 2,000 young people, largely in high school in Oakland. Shirl will talk more about work with elementary school students and their brilliance. Over 40 projects with, it's actually 135 educators. The one, I don't know how it got lost there, but it's 135 educators, 10 schools, and over 40 city partners. And this graph is a couple of years old actually already, so it could be even more because we continue to work with Oakland. These are just two snapshots of two of the recent projects that we've been working on. For a number of years, we work with a Green Academy at Skyline High School in Oakland, looking at green infrastructure, also working with the climate team in the city of Oakland, as well as what a lot of my work is right now as I'm deepening the policy areas of my own research and work with young people, looking at really transforming homeless education policy and practice. I started out in New York City and I'm in public housing, and I'm full circle back to looking at housing or the lack thereof and young people, and really trying to make things just a little bit better for young people in schools. We thought a little big picture could be helpful. We often get like, well, where's the right type of project? As you can see here, there is not one formula or right project to engage young people in. We've engaged young people in housing, transportation, school services, amenities, the environment, which really cuts across all of these, but and then public space is probably the most common or frequently gone to type of project to engage young people in. But young people, make no mistake, are brilliant at all sectors of our city, particularly transportation, because they use it, right? They don't drive a lot, so they're particularly powerful users of transit and insightful users. School subject, interestingly, it's not just social studies. A lot of people think about civic engagement as social studies, but the methodology that we use is actually right out of STEM and STEAM. So about half of the classrooms we've worked with are related to STEM in some way. We've even had a yoga class. I mean, this is just, it's a good project. It's everyday life. So it can be really connected to a range of types of schools and projects. Okay, now that's a quick overview of our first city we worked with. I'm very pleased to hand the virtual mic over to Dr. Shirl Buss, who will talk about White Pine Elementary. Shirl.
So good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here. I'm going back to the beginnings of our youngest community members, who we like to think of them as braided pathways rather than a pipeline, but those pathways really encouraging students to see and understand and start to walk on all the various pathways that might lead them to both college as well as a career, especially careers in planning, architecture, design, civic activism. So we like to start to introduce those at very early ages. And what we've discovered over the past 20 years plus is how powerful and creative our youngest community members are. So I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of projects we've worked on with elementary students. And later, when we show you the Y-Plan elementary field guide, we'll show you how these youngest students actually go through all the same steps that Deborah just outlined, and also that they look at the different domains of the city, whether it be transportation, housing, public space, or schools and environments, and then take on challenges with real world clients. So this is an example from San Rafael a couple of years ago, when all the cities in California were developing their 2040 general plans. These students, 3rd through 5th grade students, worked with an adult steering committee, a very contentious adult steering committee that was very seriously crafting and working very hard on their own collaborative process to shape this 2040 general plan. And the young students took it on, and the consultant that was leading the adult process became the client for the students. And he not only introduced them to some of the parameters of what the adults were dealing with, but enlisted them to help him infuse that plan with a lot of joy and a lot of sense of equity. So the students on the 2040 general plan focused primarily on transportation, public space, and the downtown precise plan. But in so doing, they went through all 5 steps that Deb outlined. And here they're actually doing an analysis of the city as it exists right now, telling the story of the city of San Rafael, which is, most of you are from California, but it's right north of San Francisco, right across the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's a city on the waterfront, and it's a mixed income city, one of the few in Marin County, which happens to be one of the richest counties in the state. But anyway, the students here are doing an analysis of the city and where the issues are within the city and the resources as well. The next slide, please. So they actually created a model and a set of recommendations that they presented to this committee that I was telling you about. And what was particularly remarkable, and we've seen this happen over and over again, when there are contentious adult committees that are very serious and working on problems and really, hammering things out and can be, full of all kinds of interesting individuals and characters, the students, when they come in and present their plans in a very serious, articulate, well-grounded way, well-researched way, including sometimes models and reports, it actually softens the adults on the committee. And this is an example of 4 representatives of the students who worked on this project came in to the committee meeting, the big adult committee meeting. And it was the first time that the people that were leading the meeting said, this is the first time we've seen smiles on the faces of all the adults in the committee. But what was more important is that the students' ideas were actually incorporated into the official document that's the general plan for the next 20 years. Many of these students will be the recipients or the beneficiaries of that plan. And again, like Deb said, public speaking is a critical part of it. Public presentation, how to do oral presentations, how to do visual presentations, even 3-dimensional, models of their proposals and articulating their visions and their ideas for a joyful, just city. So next slide, please. Moving over to San Francisco, this is another example, and this played out in a different way. The San Francisco Planning Department enlisted Y-Plan's assistance like 5 or 6 years ago to help them create a roadmap, or like we said, braided pathways that lead students particularly toward the planning profession, but also how young people could actually participate in planning efforts throughout the city of San Francisco. And they were kind of at a loss of how to do this. So we worked for many years with them, consulting, showing them ways to work directly with students in the classroom and go through the Y-Plan process, which you're seeing right here, but also through that interaction and through that collaboration with the planning department, we generated a menu of, I think, 35 different ways in which the planning department could engage young people in something very simple as a one-day thing or shadowing or internships, but also deeper, more systemic relationships that they could develop with the schools and with community organizations that would guarantee that there would be consistent youth engagement across the city, throughout the different projects, and throughout time. So this group, this was one of the projects that the planning department did, where they enlisted the young people to weigh in on the Isleas Creek plan, which is the major creek in San Francisco that once upon a time was the only source of water in the city and has since been concreted over and degraded by industry and various other endeavors to the point where people didn't even know it existed. And so the planning department is working on a plan of how to daylight the creek, how to regenerate the area around it, and also how to deal with sea level rise. So in the course of that, over a multi-year project with the 5th graders at Malcolm X Academy in San Francisco, the students generated a whole set of ideas of, first of all, how to educate the community about the project, what their ideas were for the project, how to, reinvigorate the shoreline around the project, and also how to use that as a generator of a neighborhood resilience plan. And so the students actually went through the Y-Plan process several times. It's an iterative process, and some of them did it in 3rd grade, some of them did it in 4th, some did it in 5th, but it all involved presentation, reports, models, maps, posters, and as you can see, the students down below were actually presenting to a youth summit as well in Oakland City Hall. So they were sharing across the bay with other youth. But on the next slide, please. All of this process, this 5 or 6 year process, resulted in the San Francisco Planning Department generating its own child and youth engagement strategy. And here is where they have started, have an online presence to show all of the menu of possibilities that they are actualizing within the planning department and sharing with other people. So they have a full-blown strategy now, to the point that they've got their wings. They're doing it all themselves, and they have a series of really powerful opportunities for young people to engage in planning at various levels. You know, as I said, from one day to multi-year, and many of them are starting to become planners. So those are two of our young people, our youngest community members, engaging in the Y plan process and in the urban planning process. And there are many, many more. I just have to say, it's very exciting to work with our youngest, most optimistic, most hopeful, and willing to be the most innovative young planners in our community. So back to you, Deb.
Oh, Deb, you're on mute.
You're still on mute, Deb.
No, I'm not. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so having just returned from Japan and actually Korea, I was really excited just to share a little bit of global Y plan. We're kind of refocused on the Bay Area for now, but for many years, we expanded across the nation, New York City, Detroit, other cities, as well as through, I think, 8 or 10 different countries. By far, our longest standing program was with partnership, really, was with Tohoku, Japan. Tohoku is the region of Japan that in 2011 was hit by now maybe the second worst earthquake in history, but the Great East Japan earthquake, which was the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown in Fukushima. So it was quite a wide regional disaster. We were invited by the U.S.-Japan Council and the embassy and a global partnership here program to rethink how could we actually teach our community development Y plan methodology to young people in Japanese in the summertime, to try to bring some hope and capacity for young people to play a role in the transformation of this whole region. Japan had committed 10 years to the physical redevelopment, and Y Plan Global was part of the social fabric redevelopment, which was really amazing. Over 1,000, I could do a whole webinar on this, but I'm going to keep it short and to the point. Over 1,000 young people engaged over the past 12 years, a 2 or 3 year hiatus because of the pandemic, of course. One project that I'll highlight that was really amazing was in 2018, the client for the Japanese students came over. We actually did a Oakland or Richmond driven project with the Japanese students. Oakland's chief resilient officer, who was served as the client, to get young people to help share what made them successful and so resilient from such a devastating physical and social regional disaster, to being heroes of their community and style actors. And so they shared their projects about what was so critical about staying connected and many other of the social dimensions that went into the recovery of their work. So it was really amazing to have this global exchange. Some of the outcomes was, of course, linking personal experience of young people to large-scale systemic impacts, both here and in Japan. They brought Oakland and Japan lessons also back to Tohoku, which was really amazing and exciting. And this is truly about, we talk about local action, global change. This is truly a manifestation of local action and global challenge and change, and really having Oakland students understand what does it mean to be an earthquake country, and how can we play an important role in the revitalization and in the preparation, for any pending natural or physical disaster. So that was a little touch of global Y plan. Maybe another conference just on global, the webinar. So here we are, Shirl and I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Shirl Buss for over 20 years since I began. So much of my inspiration comes from her absolute belief in the power and vision of young people. So I just want to recognize Shirl as being the extraordinary visionary that she is, and how much we need each other in this work. And I say that because we were able to write a book. I don't think I ever would have written the book I'd wanted to write for 20 years if it weren't for the pandemic, where we had nowhere else to go. So we were on Zoom like this, writing this book together with Mandy Epley, who was actually a Y-Plan student in 2003 in one of my first classes. So this was truly a community of practice, writing this book. And upon publication, this was for the planning and community, but we just didn't want to charge people anymore for the curriculum. We felt like it was a milestone, and we wanted to offer open access to all Y-Plan tools and resources. So hopefully we're able to share everything needed to engage young people in city planning and social change anywhere. Even Seoul, Korea, which I also was really excited about this work. So really kind of fun. We're gonna now touch on a little bit of the toolkit. I'm really just gonna give you a taste of it, hopefully navigate the website, and then show you a video to whet your appetite enough to go in and dig in and see what might be helpful towards your work. We would also love to hear what might be more helpful, or if you have strategies that we could share and highlight, we really wanna do that as well. Okay, so fingers crossed. I'm gonna bring up the website. So far, so good. This is the Center for Cities and Schools website. We have a number of major initiatives, school facilities, and others led by other of our partners. The Y-Plan is one of our major initiatives, so I'm going to click on that now. So this is Y-Plan. It's not really a separate website. We just wanted to make sure that a lot of people think that Y-Plan's an organization, and we're like, no, it's a strategy to help us realize our mission of engaging young people in city planning. So you can find out more about the history of Y-Plan, why Y-Plan. I'm going to show you quickly Y-Plan in action, because while we can share a little bit about it through slides, there's nothing like hearing more about the stories directly themselves. So we're trying to learn how to better tell a story. So we have 4 story maps on recent projects, 3 of which you're hearing about today. We also have a series of videos, which we would love to invite you to look at after today. We're going to show you one today. And because of my own technical limitations, I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer to share a video which will really bring young people directly, and community partners and planners directly, into today's webinar and presentation. So Jennifer, take it away.
We live in a place that's bounded by water. It's characterized by water. We know that the climate is changing. Sea levels are rising. We live in a place where there are other stresses, including inequities in economy, in means, in social access. And we need to think about how we can make a more just, equitable, environmentally resilient world.
Resilient by Design was a one-year challenge in the Bay Area where they brought together teams of professionals, experts, and regional agencies to try to address the impacts of climate change. But they were missing that community and youth component. And so through Y-Plan, they were able to go into classes and really get to learn from students and young people what are the issues that they were facing every day, and what does that have to do with our long-term vision for the region around climate change.
Some things I don't want to change in East Palo Alto are places like the Baylands, in which people may not see the use or beauty of it right away, but if you live around there and you know its like actual purpose, it's such a helpful part of EPA. It's important to realize and understand where you are and that you're not the first one to be there. There's people or creatures, like living organisms, that have been there before you, and to like move in and just start taking over land, it's doing to them what you feel is unjustly being done to you.
For a Y plan, we went on a field trip to a place where no one in Richmond really knows about, not even us if they didn't introduce it to us through the program. We went as a class and we observed the land and we came up with our own ideas to innovate what we think the area should be.
In the 1960s through 1980s, when a lot of freeways were being built, it cut off a lot of our communities from those natural routes. So unfortunately, a lot of our younger generation has lost an identity that is really important.
When the young people were asked, why resilience is important for them, I think they were really pushing to think about how can that city that they live in today be a city that they can see themselves in long term. Having a resilient region really means a region that allows for those opportunities to be here, home, where they're already living. Before Y Plan, I was not aware of the potential our city had. I was just ready to get up and leave Richmond, go somewhere else. I wasn't thinking of ways to, innovate our city into making it something good, into making it something positive for our community and the people that live here.
Their experience is their gift. The projects they work on, the spaces that they design, the amenities that they ask for, when we're able to show them that their voice created it, I really feel like it's not just if, you build it, they will come, but if they build it, they will come back.
Government does not care about Oakland. It takes all of Oakland's community to even get the government's attention. And even with government's attention, that don't mean nothing.
At first, I was really mad about Y Plan. Really didn't want to participate in it because I was this is just another form of gentrification. But that was without me thinking about the actual power I had and what I could bring to the table and be able to help Oakland's community a lot more.
Kodo is a phenomenal student. He has so many opinions and he has this trove of experience that is not accessed in traditional ways through the traditional education system. There's a lot of changes happening in Oakland and they are the perfect people to actually go and develop plans of action that don't leave behind these communities.
Many of the youth experience some of these challenges in our communities firsthand, and so they bring such great insights and knowledge to how we need to address some of these bigger climate challenges that we have before us.
It actually gave me a platform to voice my opinion and use my voice to see a change that I felt was necessary and could actually help my community in a positive way.
It feels really important to us because they're asking us. I noticed that students are waking up to the fact that, this is an actual conflict that we have to face, and that since they're directly talking to us, we're the ones who create change.
The fact that we as students got to be a part of something like this, and we got to be in this environment with adult professionals, some of us that actually want to pursue something in the field of science, technology, engineering, and math. I think this is kind of an eye-opener for us.
Y Plan gives our students the opportunity to find their voice in the community. Students have to think of what they want their world to be like and create for that. We don't need a bunch of little consumers. We need creators. And if we give them the opportunity to create, that's called empowerment.
Also, the cars transport the expressions of the person. That's really great.
we come up with design, but then ultimately, how do we actually implement these ideas in our community? This opportunity to open up people's imagination is really how we start to get to solutions.
The young people's lived experience in the Bay Area is really the missing link that we need to address in order to create and build a resilient Bay Area.
Great, thank you so much. Oh, it's always just like, we've known these kids over so much time. It's still beautiful to hear their voices. And something that's really sweet is that the documentary was clearly done before we wrote the book. And so much of what we wrote about in the book really built on the analysis that came from this regional work over several years. So that was really powerful. Okay. I kind of want to, I'm going to show a little bit more of the toolkit and then, excuse me, we didn't build in enough question and answer time. I'm wondering if we can pause before going into small breakout and just have like 5 minutes of Q&A. I think we'll be okay for timing. Is that cool? And everybody? Okay. Okay, so here are the slides again. We have, I think this is one of my favorite videos, but there are really also many videos capturing different aspects of the work. This one, Connecting BART to the Community, is also a beautiful video of a BART regional project where young people worked with BART for a year, a very powerful project. This is a great story on New York City. New York City over 8 years adopted Y-Plan in 20 different high schools. And then back to here in Richmond, another wonderful project about the city and city management, leaders working there with young people. And so much more on our website to share with you. I'm going to go back to my slides. Actually, no, I'm going to turn now to show you quickly the actual toolkit before we pause for a few questions. I'm really just going to do highlights on the toolkit because it would take so long to go into depth on much, but basically the way we designed the toolkit is that there are 2 ways you can dig into this work. One is you filter it by, if you're an educator, a civic client, or planner, you can check that box off and get materials just really targeted towards you or higher ed partner or on one of the phases, different formats. The 2 major different ways is the top is all-in-one guides and FAQs. Basically, because a lot of this started during the pandemic, we created slide decks to make it really easy for everyone. So you can get this slide deck, make a copy of it, and make it your own. We want these to be used, stolen, taken, adopted. It's our hope to make this as transferable to your work as possible. So we have a teacher's guide for community partners, higher ed partners, or K-12. Probably one of the most used tools right now is the Y-Plan Mini. I'm just going to pull that up really quickly. It's for folks who haven't done a lot of this before. It's sort of you can do this in 3 hours or a week. It's kind of a best of like 1 or 2 of the activities in each of the steps. And it's really seen as just a workbook. It's easy to download. And again, you can make it your own. They're all transferable into Google Docs, but the Y-Plan Mini is a really nice way just to get started and get a taste for that work. I'm going to invite Shirl to describe the other tool that's also so beautiful, which is the Y-Plan Elementary Guidebook.
So when we started adapting the Y-Plan process to the elementary school age group, we really had to break it down to the bare essentials so that young people could really understand complicated issues such as planning and design and architecture. So there were a lot of questions that students might have had that we could really actually break down into this field guide for elementary students. So you could stop right here on this one. So we've actually designed it so that there are the 5 sections of the Y plan, the 5 steps of Y plan, but within each one are a set of activities that are doable from a planning facilitator or an education facilitator or even in an after-school setting. And each activity, each section or each project, I guess you could say, for example, this one here, this is the very first startup one, is what I bring to the table, which is a critical part of the Y plan process where students really assess their own strengths. And this one is actually putting them onto a paper plate or a plate that you're putting at the table. But what I'm showing you here is that each one says what the activity is, what the goals are, what the materials are, and what the steps are. And that's really important to break it down to something so simple and with such simple materials such as paper plate or wooden plates or wooden forks and spoons and a few collage materials and a few pens. But again, it can be a very powerful activity where students actually see what each one of them brings to the table, the strengths they bring, and what that table looks like when you've set the whole table up. You've got a powerful set of strengths and talents and interests. So each section of the Y plan elementary field guide has easy to digest activities and really tried and true activities that we know are really wonderful. This can be applied to any kind of project question. And as we said earlier, the project questions are given to the students by their clients. You can maybe scroll through a couple more, Deb, if you'd like. But again, students have used this process to take on the housing element. They've contributed to the housing element. They contributed to transportation plans down through the centers of cities. They've reimagined ghost malls. They've contributed to the Resilient by Design Challenge and are continuing that work. And again, this process, sending them through the process that you as planners probably go through too. Maybe it's not quite as fun when you do it, but again, mapping the city, analyzing the city, collecting the data about the city, doing a SWOT analysis. All of those steps are critical to leading to the brainstorming, envisioning, and then coming up with a set of recommendations and doing a cost analysis, cost benefit analysis, like what are the opportunities, what are the detracting elements in that, and even sometimes thinking about money. They often don't think about money that much, but they actually study a lot of best practices around the world that have been implemented and really see both the consequences, the unintended and intended consequences. And then again, like we said earlier, presentation is really critical, because no matter what profession these young people go into, their communication skills, their leadership skills, their ability to see themselves as innovators are really important skills, talents to cultivate along the way, and it will lead to many great things that will happen for them in their future. I think I might have mentioned we also align this with the curriculum as best we can, so that teachers, when we actually work directly in the classrooms with our wonderful teacher partners, it aligns with coursework in geography, science, civic activism, civics, even mathematics. Everything can really be brought into play and applied in a really exciting way for young people. Like, oh, this is why we need to study math. Oh, this is why it's important to understand our history. So that's the Y Plan Elementary Field Guide in a nutshell. And Deb, I'm not sure where you're going
Thank
next.
you, Shirl. So I think, that's, we welcome you to go into the toolkit, but I really want to take a 10-minute pause before we go into the small groups, or 8 minutes, and invite a few questions that might come from the toolkit or the video, or we've been talking a lot more than I would ever talk in a classroom. So let's pause there and see if we can take 2 or 3 questions.
You're looking for a hand, Deb?
Sure. Yes, please raise your hand. No questions? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, then
I
yeah.
can ask a question. And I know I've gotten a chance to ask you some questions already in our previous conversations, but when you work with City of San Francisco or City of Richmond, are you having planners? Are you working directly with planners, or is it through a consultant, or like what does that relationship look like between like school district or classroom and like yeah? So maybe it's unique for every situation, but maybe you could give an example.
Deb, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Say the question. You froze a little bit on me, so just say really quickly again the question.
Could you provide, yeah, an example of the relationship between planner, consultant, classroom, and the youth, I guess. Like what are we working, are planners working with the school district or with a consultant through the school district? Like what does that relationship typically look like?
Yeah, I can just say for a lot of the youth programs, it's all of the above. This is really, there isn't one formula. It's why you can say you can choose your sector, whether you're a teacher or whether a planner. For planners, often people have heard about our work and have come to us saying, I'd love to engage young people. And so for the last few years, we sort of did a matchmaking of planners that want to do the work and networks of teachers that we know that might want to do it together. But typically, folks, you all have networks of your own. So the issue is if you really have a question to go work with either a teacher, it can be hard, or a district. Sometimes it can align, and it can be an after-school group as well. So it really depends on tapping into your local networks, but it's not one right or the other. Sometimes a teacher really wants to work with a community partner and has reached out to saying, you know, like in Skyline, they really wanted their green pathway to work with a climate change group in Oakland, in the city of Oakland. So they reached out to the city.
And we at the university have really played a role in making that partnership happen. Like for example, in San Francisco, in the beginning, the planners in San Francisco had no idea how to work in the schools, and we started helping them forge those relationships with the schools, so that now they have a lot of built-in relationships with the different schools, so that they're able to actually call upon schools in different areas where they have a project or they have a topic matter that really aligns with that school district or that school part of the city. And so they go to their partners now. They have relationships with principals and with teachers. And so they really are able to go in and work in those schools directly themselves. But the university played a big role in getting those things going in the beginnings, forging those partnerships. And like Deb said, a couple times, it was like the secretary in the planning department had a child in a school who knew the principal. You know, somehow that started off in the beginning, like just building those relationships in really incremental ways. But now they've got a structural setup so that they have schools that they go to regularly now and work with regularly, depending upon their project. So that was a really great question, because it is, they were kind of shocked in the beginning, like, we'd like to do this, but we don't really know how to do it. And so we helped them along the way. And now they've got tons of experts within the planning department that are able to work with young people. And it's really exciting to see such a willing planning department. They're rock stars. Y'all should get to know them all up in San Francisco. They're great.
Definitely.
Back to you, Deb.
I think Lily just had a question, and maybe that can be our second question until we go into small groups. But there's a cynicism of government was alluded to, by Coda in the video. What are some of the ways we've built trust and relationships with students? I think the biggest thing is, the thing that we get wrong is to do a one and done type of thing with young people, where you show up or you have one engagement meeting. And I think we do that to everybody, not just young people. And then you don't follow up. So for us, the biggest thing is inviting that cynicism, but sticking around so that it's not just a one-time deal, that you really are interested over time in collaborating with the school and the community partner. Because I don't think you can teach trust, right? You have to earn it. And so I think the earning it is sticking around when it gets hard and the questions get really tough. Just traveling just now, a lot of the questions were, well, when you get people together, the questions get tough and, you know, tension comes in and isn't, you know, how do you deal with that? Are you setting yourself up for more problems? And we're like, the magic is actually in the tension. The magic of this work is where there is conflict, and you stick around long enough to understand and work through that. One example that we also talk about, like at the beginning, is working on the downtown development plan with the city of Oakland, with very eager city planners who there's a whole race and equity division, and they really wanted to get young people engaged in redeveloping downtown Oakland. But these young people were really right. They're like, we're not going to be able to afford to live here if it gets that much better. I mean, we can barely afford to live here as it is. And it was really having to work with planners over, this example was over 8 weeks or 9 weeks, to really learn what could be helpful. You know, one of the things that I love to example is that planners were so proud of the bikes when they were just coming out. Oh, isn't that great? We have bikes. And then 2 of the young people were like, yeah, but we can't use those bikes. They all have credit cards, right? And just those little subtle things that, you know, when adults show up and share vulnerability, it just, in our experience, can build trust. I don't know if that's helpful, Shirl, if you want to add anything.
That's fine.
Okay, so I think those are 2 great questions, and hopefully more dialogue will happen in the small group. So without further ado, we have just a half an hour. We're going to go into a small group. I'm going to share my screen quickly to share a couple of the questions that we were proposing for you all to discuss in the breakout. So just 4 questions. 1, what project questions might you have that you want to engage young people with? Excuse me, I've been talking too much. 2nd, what information do you need to gather to move forward on that? What actions might you take? And where, where might you present the ideas in action? Excuse me. So those are the 4 questions. I believe our partners will put those questions in the chat. And we ask you to spend about 5 minutes on each question.
We're going to have each group should have somebody that's a facilitator. Just volunteer to be a facilitator. One person who's going to be a note taker and will report out at the end 1 or 2 key ideas that comes out of your group. The questions will be in the chat, and to take the 5 minutes per question. I think the number 1 question is very important because we sort of introduced you to a range of some of the project questions that young people have taken on in our experience, but right now you may have a challenge or a project question where young people's participation will really fortify or amplify your work, really add value to your work. And I think that's the most important thing, is what are those authentic questions that you're grappling with that young people can really contribute to? And then you can go into number 2 and number 3 and number 4 here, but it really helps you start to formulate how you might engage young people in your own community. So, ta-da, Jennifer is going to be our breakout meister.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We had a great session, so we have about 4 minutes to finish up, and I want to invite 3 highlights. So I don't know how many groups we had, but can I invite one person to raise their hand and give a highlight or something cool that was talked about? And if anyone else can see a hand raised, please let me know. Just raise a hand or Adam. All right.
I'll share really quickly. I think a big takeaway in our group was it's easier to meet people where they're at, organize amongst already organized groups. So with regards to youth, if there's an after-school program or a community organization who's a trusted partner that has the trust, it's much easier to kind of facilitate or work with that group than to try and recreate the wheel or do a survey or conduct a community charrette and do the work that someone else is doing, perhaps just as well, if not better, than you're looking to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I was the note taker for the breakout room 1, and we had a fabulous discussion with some planners at the city of Signal Hill and Los Angeles. And I think the discussion, we kind of raised more questions than answers, but I think that was, a lot of the goal of this whole thing. And so some of those questions were, if how do we maintain that continuity? If you have like one touch point at one point with the youth, how do you maintain that? How do you build relationships with the local schools or with CBOs who can connect you to those youth populations that you really want to connect with or are underrepresented? And how do you reach those populations who might not have a local CBO or someone to sort of help bridge that gap? So those were some of our highlights.
That's terrific. We have time for one more quick one. Shirl, were you in a group that you want to share?
Yeah, we had Alexa, our Alexa, not the Alexa, but our Alexa is going to report out for our group focused on transportation.
Yeah, we had a great conversation. We were talking about long-range planning and how we want to make that visual for our community, especially high school students. So we talked about using games or softwares. One example was Unreal Engines. So we're thinking about ways to make this more interesting to students who are a bit younger, who might think like this doesn't impact them, but it is their future. And it was a great conversation, and I feel very excited and thankful that we got to talk to everyone there in that room.
Oh, I love that. That's terrific. And I believe it's just about 3 o'clock. I'm going to conclude my last remark and then invite Shirl to have her last remark and then turn it to Seika quickly. A reporter once said they were covering the Y plan in Oakland. They said, I've been struggling trying to figure out how to make this interesting and kind of sexy for the population. And then they said, I got it. Planning is the one profession where you're paid to dream. And isn't that a great message for young people? So I'll leave you with that thought. Planning is a profession where you're paid to dream. Shirl, any last comment?
And working with our youngest students, they are the true dreamers. And yet I feel like our young people really, if people heeded their call, our cities would be a lot more humane. And so just remember that they are the key to our humane, joyful, and equitable cities, and to really enlist them as your partners. They can really enhance your work. So good luck. And it was so much fun meeting in the small groups, the breakout groups. I hope all the groups were as fun as ours. And just carry that joy with you when you go back into your work.
Turning it back over to Seika. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you, Deborah and Shirl, so much for this joyful time together. My heart is so full, and I'm so excited to keep working towards a more equitable future with our youth, especially. Thank you to all the participants. I hope you found this session useful, and we'd like to invite you to participate in the survey that's going to pop up when we close the Zoom. Special thanks to Jennifer, who provided our AV support today, and all the SCAG staff who helped put this together. Thanks again, and I hope you all stay safe and healthy and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.